The doors of the throne room groaned open, their obsidian surfaces carved with the history of 1,000 conquests. The air hummed with the low, resonant pulse of the Zarethian Dominion's victory chant, a sound that thrummed through the bones of all who heard it. Queen Sylthara Vexis lounged upon the razor throne, a seat forged from the wreckage of fallen empires. Her long, lithe form was draped in armor that clung like a second skin, black and gold, segmented like the carapace of some celestial predator. It left little to the imagination, hugging the dangerous curves of her body, the cutouts along her waist revealing smooth, violet skin that shimmered faintly in the dim light. Her skin was a deep, royal purple, smooth as polished gemstone, catching the dim light of the chamber in subtle ripples. Shoulder-length hair, white as the heart of a dying star, framed a face that was both beautiful and terrifying. High cheekbones, a strong jawline, lips the color of bruised twilight. Her eyes were her most striking feature. Large, almond-shaped, the irises a swirling silver that seemed to shift like liquid mercury when she turned her head. When she spoke, her voice was a weapon, low, velvety, laced with the promise of violence. "This is the tribute." The envoy trembled, his forehead pressed to the floor.
"The last warrior of Earth, your radiance. He fought until the last of his kind fell."
Her gaze slid to the human. He knelt in chains, but his spine was straight, his shoulders unbowed. Blood streaked his face, his dark hair matted with sweat and grime. His body was a testament to his species' stubbornness, broad, corded with muscle, scarred from battles she had not witnessed. And his eyes, oh, his eyes, they burned, not with fear, not with submission, but with something far more dangerous. Defiance. A slow, predatory smile curled her lips. "What do you want, human?" she purred. "Gold? A world of your own. Speak before I grow bored." He didn't hesitate.
"One night with you."
The throne room erupted in gasps. A lesser ruler might have had him flayed for such insolence. Sylthara only laughed, the sound like shivering steel. "Bold," she mused, "but I do not take beggars to my bed. If you want me, little warrior, you will have to prove you're more than just a dying relic." She flicked a clawed hand toward the shadows. "Korvath." Her general stepped forward, his massive form clad in battle-worn plate, his own horns notched from countless duels. His yellow eyes gleamed with disdain. "You will fight him," Sylthara said, her voice a silken command. "If you win, I will consider your request." The human's grin was all teeth.
"And if I lose?"
She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper that slithered through the air like smoke. "Then you will learn why the Zarethian Dominion has no mercy for fools." The arena pulsed with the heartbeat of the Dominion. Sylthara watched from her elevated throne, fingers curled around the armrests of jagged obsidian. Below, the combat sand stretched wide, their surface still stained from yesterday's executions. The air smelled of ionized metal and sweat, the perfume of warriors. Korvath stood at the center, his massive frame encased in battle-worn armor. His violet skin gleamed under the artificial suns, the scars across his knuckles telling stories of countless campaigns. He had been her blade for centuries, unshakable in his loyalty. Until now.
"You would let him challenge me?"
His voice was a growl, barely contained. She tilted her head, letting her white hair slip over one shoulder. "You sound afraid, General." His yellow eyes flashed.
"I sound insulted."
A murmur rippled through the assembled nobles. They lined the balconies like carrion birds, their jeweled robes whispering as they leaned forward. This was more than a duel, it was theater, and she was the playwright. The human entered without fanfare. Darien Voss walked as if the chains still weighed on him, though they had been removed. His dark hair was tied back now, his face wiped clean of blood. The Dominion's physicians had patched his wounds, but nothing could mend the fire in his gaze. "You came," Sylthara observed.
You didn't leave me much choice.
His voice was rough, edged with dark amusement. Korvath sneered.
You will regret this, human.
Darien rolled his shoulders.
Heard that before.
The gong sounded. Korvath moved first, a blur of violet and steel, his plasma blade igniting with a snap hiss. Darien barely sidestepped, the heat of the weapon singing the air where his throat had been. Sylthara's nails dug into the throne. The general pressed his advantage, driving forward with brutal efficiency. Every swing was calculated to kill, every feint designed to corner. But Darien fought like a man who had already died. He ducked under a decapitating strike, twisted away from a gutting thrust, his movements economical, desperate, beautiful. A backhanded blow sent Darien sprawling. Blood flecked the sand.
Pathetic.
Korvath spat.
Is this what you wanted, my queen? To see your pet humbled?
Sylthara said nothing. Darien pushed himself up, wiping his mouth. His ribs were bruised, his breathing ragged. But when he smiled, it was with teeth.
That all you got?
The general roared, charging. This time, Darien didn't dodge. He met the attack head-on, catching Korvath's wrist mid-swing. The crack of bone echoed through the arena. The plasma blade tumbled from nerveless fingers, and in one fluid motion, Darien wrenched the general's arm behind his back, driving him to his knees. Silence. Korvath panted, his face twisted in pain and disbelief. Darien could have killed him, should have by Dominion law. Instead, he leaned down, his voice a whisper only the general could hear. Then he stepped back. The crowd erupted. Sylthara rose, her silver eyes unreadable. You spared him. Darien met her gaze.
I don't kill for sport.
Korvath snarled, cradling his arm.
This is a violation of tradition.
Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. Something she had never seen before. Betrayal. She would deal with that later. For now, she had a promise to keep. Come, human, she said, turning toward the private corridors. Let us discuss your reward. The moment the chamber doors sealed behind them, Sylthara claimed her prize. She guided Darien onto the raised dais of her private lounge, settling his weight across her lap with deliberate possession. His breath warmed her neck. Quick but controlled. Always controlled. You still carry the scent of battle, she murmured, threading her fingers through his dark hair.
Yours or mine?
His hands moved with purpose, navigating the intricate clasps of her armor with surprising familiarity. She should have stopped him, should have made him work for every concession. But the heat of his touch through the thin undersuit made her pulse quicken, and when the first piece of her chest plate clattered to the floor, she let it lie. Bold, she chided, even as she arched into his touch. Darien's responding hum vibrated against her throat.
You inspire it.
Then his mouth found new territory. He slid to his knees between her, hands tracing up the sensitive inner lines of her thighs with devastating patience. The fabric parted under his careful attention, revealing skin untouched by sunlight or another's caress. Human! Her voice caught as his lips brushed a particularly delicate curve.
Darien.
He corrected, his breath a warm promise against her skin.
Say it.
Her fingers tightened in his hair, whether to pull him closer or push him away. Even she wasn't certain. But when his attention focused on her most vulnerable point, her back arched of its own accord, a sound escaping her lips that no courtier had ever heard.
Again.
He urged, his grip firm on her hips. She should have ended him for such insolence. Instead, she let him show her something new. His devotion was relentless, alternating between broad, languid strokes and precise attention that made her muscles tremble. When she tried to guide him, he caught her wrist and pressed it gently but firmly to the lounge, never breaking rhythm. You, she gasped, fight without honor. He paused just long enough to meet her gaze.
You wanted a warrior.
I wanted, a diversion. His next deliberate motion stole her words entirely. The climax built slowly, then crashed over her like a wave, her free hand scrambling for purchase against the smooth obsidian. Stars danced behind her eyelids as she rode out the sensation, his name a whispered confession against her skin. Darien rose, wiping his mouth with deliberate slowness, looking every bit the victor despite his position at her feet.
Liar. Still doubt human capabilities?
Sylthara hauled him up by his collar, her other hand already working at his restraints. "I think," she growled, "you talk when you should be acting." What followed was no gentle union, but a fierce meeting of wills and bodies. When she finally drew him into her embrace, it was with a satisfied hum, her legs locking around him like twin blades sheathing. The air between them crackled with unspoken challenges, every movement a silent battle for dominance that neither truly wanted to win. His hands mapped the terrain of her back with the precision of a star map navigator, finding every hidden tension and knot of royal burden. She retaliated by sinking her teeth into the corded muscle of his shoulder, tasting salt and stubbornness. The sound that escaped him wasn't pain, it was victory.
Still giving orders, Your Radiance?
He murmured against the sensitive curve where her neck met shoulder. His breath sent shivers along nerves she'd forgotten existed. She answered by dragging her nails down his spine in a slow, deliberate stroke. "Someone has to." Her words fractured as he demonstrated exactly why human hips moved differently than Zarethian ones, rolling in a way that made her gasp. The lounge beneath them became a battleground of tangled limbs and stolen breaths. Every thrust was parried with a roll of her hips, every moan countered with a bite. The obsidian surface grew slick beneath them, reflecting their intertwined forms in distorted shadows that danced across the chamber walls. When the tension finally crested, it wasn't with surrender but mutual annihilation, a supernova of sensation that left them both breathless and blinking against the sudden brightness behind their eyelids. For one unguarded moment, her forehead rested against his, their rapid breaths mingling in the charged air. Then the Queen remembered herself. With a regal sniff that would have been more convincing if her hair wasn't thoroughly mussed, she traced the fresh marks on his shoulders. "You'll need armor to cover those tomorrow." Darien's laughter rumbled through them both as he collapsed beside her.
Worth every scratch.
The silence that followed was different now, charged not with tension, but something far more dangerous. Sylthara stared at the vaulted ceiling, acutely aware of the warmth still radiating between them. This had been meant as a simple transaction, a night's distraction. So why did it feel like the first move in a much longer game? The first warning came as a whisper against her neck. Darien's hand tightened on her hip in the pre-dawn gloom, his body tensing against hers. Sylthara didn't question it. Some primal instinct had her rolling from the bed in one fluid motion, her bare feet silent on the cold floor. The scent hit her next. Polished armor, charged plasma coils. Korvath. She turned just as the doors to her chambers exploded inward. Her general stood framed in the wreckage, flanked by 6 conclave enforcers in full battle regalia. His yellow eyes burned in the dim light, his gaze flickering from her disheveled hair to the human rising behind her.
"You've gone too far."
His voice was raw, stripped of all deference. Sylthara didn't bother covering herself. Let them see. Let them understand. "You forget yourself, General." She tilted her head, letting the twin moons illuminate the fresh marks along her collarbone. "This is not your place to storm." One of the enforcers shifted, his grip tightening on his pulse rifle. Darien stretched with deliberate slowness, the sheets pooling around his waist.
Morning, boys. You here for the breakfast buffet?
Korvath's lip curled.
"The conclave has spoken. Your reign ends today."
A beat of silence. Then, Sylthara laughed. It wasn't the reaction they expected. She saw it in the way the enforcers exchanged glances, in the subtle twitch of Korvath's fingers toward his sidearm. "Oh, my old friend," she purred, stepping forward. Did you truly think I wouldn't know? The general stiffened. She circled them like a predator, her bare feet making no sound on the polished obsidian. The midnight meetings, the stolen access codes, the attempt to reprogram my sentinels. Her smile turned feral. Tell me, was it worth betraying everything you swore to protect? Korvath's face darkened.
You've broken every sacred law.
I am the law. Her roar shook the chamber. The first shot came from the left. Sylthara moved before the thought fully formed, twisting, her arm snapping up to catch the plasma bolt on her bracer. The impact sent shocks up her arm, but she barely felt it. Chaos erupted. Darien was a blur of motion, flipping the bed into the path of two enforcers while his free hand snatched the fallen pulse rifle. He fired without looking, the shot taking a third soldier through the throat.
Door!
He barked. She didn't question it. One clawed hand slammed against the biometric panel, triggering the emergency lockdown. The reinforced barriers slammed down, cutting off 3 enforcers mid-charge. Their screams as the crushing fields engaged were mercifully brief. Korvath lunged, his plasma blade ignited with a scream of energy, aimed straight for her heart. Sylthara sidestepped, only to feel the world tilt as her bare foot slipped in spilled blood. The blade grazed her ribs, searing flesh. She snarled, retaliating with a kick that sent him stumbling back. You dare! A pulse round took Korvath in the shoulder, spinning him around. Darien stood amidst the wreckage, smoke curling from the rifle barrel.
Sorry,
he said, not sounding sorry at all. The general collapsed to his knees, clutching the wound. His yellow eyes burned with betrayal.
You choose this over centuries of service? A human?
Sylthara wiped blood from her mouth. I choose the warrior who fights with me, not for me. The silence that followed was heavier than the corpses littering her chambers. Darien nudged a fallen enforcer with his foot.
So, still think this was just about physical distraction?
She shot him a look. Then the alarms began to wail. Across the Dominion, the emergency channels crackled to life. Conclave forces mobilizing in every sector, their transmission declaring the Queen's supposed demise. Sylthara ripped the plasma blade from Korvath's belt. Change of plans, she said, tossing it to Darien. Feel like starting a war? His grin was all teeth.
Thought you'd never ask.
As dawn broke over the capital, 2 figures strode through the smoking ruins of the throne room, one dripping royal ichor, the other humming an old human war song. The real battle, it seemed, had only just begun. The capital burned beautifully at dawn. Sylthara watched from the shattered observation deck as firestorms bloomed across the lower districts, Conclave loyalists making their last, desperate stands. The scent of ionized metal and burning promethium filled her nostrils, familiar as an old lover's touch. Darien's warmth pressed against her back, his chin resting on her bare shoulder.
They're folding faster than expected.
She didn't need to ask how he knew. The human had an uncanny sense for battle rhythms, as if war flowed in his veins instead of blood. Disappointed, she murmured, leaning into his touch despite herself. His chuckle vibrated through her.
Just surprised your people break so easy.
Our people, she corrected absently, watching another tower collapse in a shower of glittering debris. The words slipped out before she could stop them. Darien stilled. Then his hands slid around her waist, turning her to face him. The rising sun painted his scars gold, his dark eyes reflecting the fires below.
Say that again.
Our people, she corrected absently, watching another tower collapse in a shower of glittering debris. The words slipped out before she could stop them. Darien stilled. Then his hands slid around her waist, turning her to face him. The rising sun painted his scars gold, his dark eyes reflecting the fires below.
Breach in Sector 9.
A sentinel droned.
All remaining forces.
Darien silenced it with a well-aimed pulse shot, never breaking her gaze.
They can wait.
His mouth crashed into hers. This wasn't like their first kiss, all teeth and dominance and testing boundaries. This was something far more dangerous. His lips moved with deliberate slowness, mapping every response, learning what made her fingers clutch at his armor. When she bit his lower lip, he rewarded her with a groan that vibrated straight through her core. "You're distracted," she taunted between kisses, feeling his hands tremble against her back.
You're lethal.
He countered, nipping at her throat.
And we're about to have company.
The doors burst open behind them. Sylthara sighed against Darien's mouth. Timing, as ever, is not our ally. 20 conclave zealots flooded the deck, their white robes stained with soot and blood. At their head stood a tall figure, his ceremonial blade glowing crimson.
Your reign ends here, traitor.
Darien didn't bother turning around.
You take left, I take right.
She laughed, a bright, startled sound that made the zealots falter, just like the bedroom. Then they moved as one. What followed wasn't battle. It was poetry. Sylthara flowed through the zealots like liquid shadow, her claws finding throats and arteries with surgical precision. Darien fought beside her, his stolen plasma blade carving arcs of blue fire through the smoke. When their leader lunged for her exposed back, Darien intercepted without looking, gutting him with a twist of his wrist. The last zealot fell to his knees, choking on his own blood.
Message for the conclave?
Darien panted, offering her the blade. Sylthara considered the trembling figure. Then she tossed the weapon aside. Let them see. She fisted her hands in Darien's blood-stained tunic and dragged him into a kiss that left no room for doubt of her choice, of his place, of the new order being born in fire and desire. When they finally broke apart, the surviving conclave forces had dropped their weapons. Darien's thumb swiped across her smudged lip paint.
That how queens declare victory now?
No, she breathed, pulling him back in. This is... Beyond the glass, the rising sun ignited the skyline in gold and crimson, a new dawn for the Dominion, and for the warrior queen who'd found her match in the most unlikely of places.